This is the first event really since we've been officially clear of COVID restrictions. So it's really good to see such a good turnout at such short notice. Now the COVID experience gives us a tremendous opportunity to re-establish certain aspects of our manufacturing and food production which were never followed through. So we now have we're back reliant on imported bread. We've lost, of course, Ramsey Bakery, which was the major supplier, and the government's response was, well, we're not in the business of making bread. Well, they're not in the business of running a shipping company either, but quite rightly they acquired the Isle of Man steam packet, and such a staple as bread production, it should have been realised that even as an interim measure, production at the Ramsey Bakery site should have been either maintained with cooperation of the owners, who were about to celebrate 50 years and then changed their mind and shut it instead, and done something about that. We're currently experiencing terrific shortages of eggs in the Isle of Man, particularly Manx eggs, because of avian flu, and again because of the sort of almost cottage industry nature of egg production in the Isle of Man. We're very susceptible. The western area, which is the major area for Manx egg production, has been severely curtailed because of avian flu. These are all things where we can easily get it going again. Manx wheat makes good bread, I can tell you. And of course the knock-on effects are terrific. We live in an economy which always defaults to expedience and short-term ease rather than long-term worth. So the money that we spend on what we call cheap imports is actually very expensive, because every penny out of our economy is a penny you have to replace instead of keeping the money in the economy. So here we are now suffering massive price increases because of world events where, okay, yes, it would impact on us anyway to some degree, but we could have alleviated it so much more if the government actually acted like a national government, instead of the very expedient approach. So we really have to have a good look, and I ask the government, who will, obviously the members of government who will hear what we say here today, ask them to have a good look at their objectives for the future. It's not all bad. We managed to get rid of Will Greenhow. I mean, when Alf Cannon took over as Chief Minister, he's a very different character to Howard Quayle, and whereas we disagree with many of Alf Cannon's policies, at least he has the wherewithal to cut out the not quite dead wood. I would describe as Will Greenhow as under Howard Quayle, or above Howard Quayle, the power behind the throne, and Alf didn't waste any time in getting shut of him and a couple of others. There were, in the sort of mini light of the long knives, there were some casualties who didn't deserve it. That's what might be described as collateral damage. But anyways, I'll hand over to Cesar now, who will read in Manx. So I'd ask you all to gather in as tight as possible so you can hear, given that we don't have a translation. So you know, copies, not translation copies.
Yeah.
Would you?
I know, what you said.
Nah, can you miss it?
She mananach mish. She mananach dewey mish. Len monach Jay and Illiam as in culture to me Anjay. To me goil anlish downser as to me egel trot. Dus Breton a chorn as in failure moor lorion. On some Britain veg. To me a ve cloy kjol and ram failure in Harris a sail kelchach nis. As les kuna vo sly mer in posin barul as Thomas Callister. Ta sly vos na church and shaw tiggle. Terwijl mannen na Ange na Ashoon en Kelchach. Ons nalben van mi klooi mannen, kul mannenach, as de mennick nis, goil aren as screw aren en sagilg. As son shigaris, van rud share van rew tacket rum, as slickly an oar, vadach rud shaw tacket, haimidus bunskol gilgach. Leis an gilg fa mi naint yn y slai eg fa fraid the lot as fregad feistin ac yn Celtic Congress son Gista Blinton os yn stien ag e. Yn ei sio fe mis fe bogasach se just yn acht fôn son nach fel mona slai ta gwl e leis y culture yndysach ein lyg mus siejeg flin y deis. Ta mi len bwysach dy ren na parent yn em gwyl an Jane Prowltus mwy sio son haraw rydw bi ciat na promised ec y tojacht. Jay Illiam y cyrch yn fem syc ysgol feed queg the perchin and elach gys na trijin ta fos lot a gled a cat. Ta nen jaw becha on chimbalacht leis slai ta lot gilg. As na gys elia gyn chimbaltach yn culture. Spastach re nach fel sio a liad cadjan son a cwt smooth a lai ren gynzach a gilg. Leis olia sio mach ta mi smwniacht yn rumpin cren fair. Cren fair se rud an caslatôn dy fel sy'n lot as gamalt sa gilg as yn culturain. Nach lysach ei fe red Illiam y gyd. Cren fair as Illiam y perchin as Illiam y cyrchin em hanelach fe mus gael mwysl cred to me. Cyrchin
Hengo Hill.
oh sianai. Cren fair as Illiam y perchin fe mi cyrchin merish ec ysgol dy fel nish nengin a fia elie. Ta pouchad a lai to mi fag yn sy tred gyda fast mai fella na ifai tred had fegael a tailiana. Hanel ad na slide yn gynzach gilg ac y fwnsgol ach fos tan gilg och na share as slickly lesh smw morn na slide fa gynzach ac y fwnsgol. Ta rydniach celtshine tred a slide shit dy fein yn jeg erin. Giet y raw van bwnsgol mai dy liwer myr yn unrhyw yn acht son slai eg dy gynzach y gilg. Ach nish se yn barol as slickly cwst o slai elia dy lysach rud elia fe on son perchin ed y nenjeg at hochjeg. Tred at fegael y fwnsgol tad a red dy chit dy fein yn slai esit. As myr slai ons Breton ta gynzach Bretnish ac ysgol hanel ad lal gole gynzach Illiam yn bay. Tad lal cach le na tad a gynzach dys rud fan a gynnu imajay ons yn bay ciat. Son Sigris, ta slai leis Iron Mai, Curtis and Scameshaw, as fuddy to be a goil blain na ge, to Curtis Iron Mach uns an Illiam, ach te orin gynnu rudniach McCown, nothing gull air, dus na jeg erin, as perchin, lurgt had figael of unskol. As nis, dus jeg erin Elia take off, te gynzach gilg, uns na skolian Elia. Shane funskol, na rud yndysach, son a gilg, gynauris. Ach lurg feed blainton, vermishnanch in a kid perchin, te sio gull air, was the hyd perchin gull na thrwd, dach shave lane. Son na iatus and moor, ta fuddy quegjeg, de lai, ta lot, gilg, de fleol. Te runiach gull air, na lurg, te dyn sugar nach fel yn Obershaw straight. Fuddy de fel shen, ilcloi blug yn kosher, club kjol, na turrison. Ac nes te orin cur dain yn gentach daw, de gofrach rish. Suggera, ta mi jikin Rome rish nitha gold and shit, onto the blainton show shit, as the care and no, bin shit rish, so slight egg, as Gil guns manning. Good am I out.
Shit, am I, man.
Go to my mood and Cesar, following through on what Cesar said, yeah, don't be too despondent about, or not despondent, but don't be too negative about the fact that not everyone gets to follow through on the Manx language. What we have seen since the 1980s when playgroups in Manx were established is that for the first time in a long time we've had children being brought up hearing the Manx around them. And even if only 1 in 10 of those children go on to actually keep up with the Manx in later life, that's far better than we've had in over 100 years. So yeah, it needs more building on, certainly, but the fact that the likes of Cesar's here, the Collister children, and all the others who've brought their children up with Manx, it shows that we've got a future, as Cesar said, if we make sure we hang on to it and don't let it backslide. But just to remind us of why we actually are here today, of course, it was the anniversary of the execution of Illiam Dhone. Still maligned as a traitor because of the romantic fiction of Walter Scott. The question didn't exist before then. And I know I've said this previous years many occasions, but if you want to look at the real traitors in the piece from any angle, it was the Stanleys, particularly the 7th Earl's son, who scarpered to France and hid when the fighting was on, and then came back, and despite Illiam Dhone's actions having saved both his family and the lordship, committed an act of high treason against his Lord and Master, the English King, by bringing a false charge of treason against Illiam Dhone. The only person who can bring a charge of high treason against the English crown is the King of England, who at the time was Charles II. And the act of treason never extended to the Isle of Man, so there is no question Illiam Dhone did the right thing, both for his own people and for the Stanleys, in actual fact. And he didn't get much thanks for that, did he? So let's forget this question, this black and white, what was he? It's not a question. He was not a traitor. And coming to the language, Dr. John Cowley spoke at this site some years ago and pointed out the fact that we identified ourselves as a separate people became very clear during the English Civil Wars. And that's when focus was turned to the language and culture, and the English lords started to seek to destroy it. So make sure we hang on to it. So we all want to get to a pub now, I'm sure. The sidings, we've got the sidings ready for us to turn up, and hopefully we'll have some music there if people have brought their instruments. What we'll do, we'll lay the wreath in memory of Illiam Dhone and all those other people who we've lost through the years who have helped the cause of the Manx nation, whether it be politically or culturally.